I went out there because I needed one day where nothing could reach me. No emails, no neighbors, no more family group chat lighting up my phone with one more "Did you see this?" link. Just a stretch of winter bare hardwoods, and the kind of quiet you only get when the nearest road is a couple miles away, and even the birds don't feel like talking. That's what I told myself anyway. The truth is, I've been sleeping like garbage. When I did sleep, it wasn't restful. It was the kind where you wake up with your jaw clenched and you can't remember the dream, only the feeling of something pushing on your chest. I wasn't looking for adventure. I wasn't looking for a story. I was looking for the opposite. Something ordinary enough to scrub my head clean. I parked at a pull-off that looked like it existed more for logging trucks than hikers. No sign, no kiosk, no laminated trail rules poster stapled to a post. Just a narrow path starting between two pines, and a strip of packed earth where other boots had gone before mine. I had water, a small first aid kit, a cheap headlamp, even though it was mid-afternoon, and a can of bear spray I bought the year before and never opened. I'd meant to take it on a trip out west. It ended up living in my glove compartment like a talisman. I checked the wind out of habit, cold and light, and started in. The woods were the kind that felt normal at first. Damp leaves underfoot, bark peeling on dead trunks, a thin crust of snow tucked into shaded pockets, like it didn't want to let go yet. I could hear my own breathing, the quiet creak of my backpack straps, and the occasional distant crack of a branch from something far off. 30 minutes in, I began to relax. I fell into the rhythm of walking and not thinking too hard. Then, I saw the tower. It didn't belong to a marked trail system. It sat on a ridgeline, barely visible through the trees at first. Just a vertical line that made my brain pause, trying to categorize it. Once I stepped into a break in the canopy, it was obvious. An old fire lookout tower, the steel kind with a square cab at the top. It rose above the surrounding trees like a skeleton. The legs were rusted. The cross bracing had patches where metal had been eaten down to flaky orange scabs. The stairs ran up the side in a tight switchback, and a few steps were missing entirely, like teeth knocked out. My first thought was that I'd wandered onto private land. My second thought was that it was too far back and too neglected for that. I stopped at the base, craning my neck. The cab windows were grimy. One was cracked. The door up top looked like it hung open slightly, the edge not sitting flush. There was no posted sign, no danger placard, no padlock on the lower gate because there was no lower gate. Just the first set of stairs, inviting in the worst way. I should have turned around right there. I knew that. I told myself I'd just take a quick look from the bottom. Just satisfy the curiosity and go. My phone didn't have service, so I couldn't even call anyone if I wanted to. That should have been a bigger red flag. But the tower had that pull old places have. The sense of a story trapped inside them. I started up. Every step made a sound. Metal whining under my weight. Bolts complaining. The handrail was cold enough to sting through my glove. I took it slow, testing each step before I committed. Some were solid. Some flexed just enough to make my stomach tighten. Halfway up, I smelled something faint but wrong. Not rot, not mold. Something like pennies, like wet iron. I paused and tried to place it. The wind shifted and it went away. At the next landing, I looked down through the open grid and saw my boot prints on the lower steps. They stood out in the thin film of frost. I told myself again, this was stupid. I could leave now. Then I saw something on the landing above me. A dark smear. It wasn't rust. Rust had a powdery texture. This looked wet and thick in the shadow. My hand tightened on the rail. I climbed 2 more flights, careful, and leaned in close to the smear. Blood. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't old either. It had the glossy, tacky look of something that had started to dry, but hadn't had time to go brown and crust. It was streaked like something had been dragged, or like something had put their hand there and slid it along the metal. I went cold, in a way the air didn't explain. My brain did what brains do when they don't want to accept something. It tried to find another answer. Deer hit by a hunter, maybe? Someone gutted something up here? Some idiot doing a horror prank. Paint. But blood looks like blood. It sits in the light differently. I stared up toward the cab. That door was definitely ajar. There was a small gust of wind, and the door moved. Not a lot, just a slight sway, like it was breathing. I forced myself to keep climbing, not because I wanted to go further, because the part of me that couldn't stand not knowing needed one more piece of information. One quick glance, then I'd leave and call it in once I got service. At the final flight, the smell hit me again. Stronger. Metallic and sharp, mixed with something sour. I stepped onto the platform outside the cab and froze. The cab was trashed. Not in the way abandoned places get trashed over years. Not graffiti and beer cans and sun-faded posters. This was recent, violent. One chair was overturned. A clipboard lay snapped in half, papers fluttering under it. A small table had been shoved hard enough to dent the wall. One of the windows had a spiderweb crack radiating from a central impact point. On the floor, there were dark spots and smears that dragged towards the cracked window, like someone had tried to crawl. There was a trail. Not a neat line. More like a story written in blotches. Blood leading to the window. The window itself was half open, shoved upwards, leaving a gap wide enough to squeeze through if you were desperate. The sill had scratches in the grime. Fresh lines where fingers or something else had clawed for purchase. I didn't step inside. I didn't touch anything. I stood on the platform staring, with my heart thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat. A thought landed in my head with awful clarity. Someone didn't leave through the stairs. Someone went out the window. That didn't make sense. The drop from this height wasn't survivable. Not without breaking something. Not without it being the only option. I backed away from the open doorway, the metal platform cold under my boots. That was it. Curiosity satisfied. Whatever this was, it wasn't mine to solve. I turned and started down. I made it 2 flights before realizing how quiet it had gotten. Not nice quiet, not woods in winter quiet, wrong quiet. No little clicks of squirrel claws on bark, no distant woodpecker, no wind moving through the branches. It was like the air itself had stopped carrying sound. I paused on a landing, gripping the rail, and listened. Nothing. I told myself I was spooking myself. Adrenaline does that. It narrows your focus, makes the world feel staged. Then I heard a soft sound from below. A single, gentle tap on metal. I leaned over the edge and looked down toward the base of the tower. Something stood in the trees. At first, my brain said deer. It was the right shape. Tan body, long legs, narrow head. But it wasn't standing like a deer. It was standing too still, like it was holding a pose. And it was too close to the tower to have approached without me hearing it. Unless it had been there the whole time. It looked up. Our eyes met. That's the moment I noticed the legs. Deer legs have a certain angle, a certain logic. These bent wrong. The joints set just a little off. Like someone had built them from memory without understanding the mechanics. The knees, if you could call them that, seemed rotated, the way a human elbow would look if you forced it backwards. Its head tilted. The movement was slow and deliberate, like it wanted to show me it was paying attention. I didn't move. I didn't wave. I didn't shout. I didn't do anything. The deer, if it was a deer, took one step out of the trees, placing its hoof on the edge of the clearing around the tower. The hoof was wrong too. Not split the way a deer should be. It looked more solid, like a blunt shoe. Then, just like that, it took another step, and another, until it was standing at the base, directly below me. Looking up, my mouth went dry. My hands were sweating inside my gloves, and the metal rail felt slick. I told myself it was just an injured deer, a deer with some deformity, a deer that had been hit maybe. My brain clawed for normal explanations, like it could anchor itself. But there was nothing normal about the way it watched me. It didn't blink. I realized then that I could see too much white. Not the sclera. Deer eyes don't show whites like humans. This was milky. The eyes were cloudy like cataracts, but still locked on me. I started down again, faster. Not running. Running would get me killed on these stairs, but moving with purpose. The tower groaned under me. Below, the deer moved. I heard it on the steps. That made my stomach drop. I hadn't thought it would climb. The sound wasn't the light clatter of hooves the way you hear in videos of deer on porches. This was heavier, like something wearing weight. I looked down again. It was on the first landing already. It shouldn't have been that fast. My headlamp bounced against my chest. My bear spray was in the side pocket of my pack. I reached for it without taking my eyes off the stairs, fingers fumbling for the zipper. The sound of it climbing came closer. Metal squealed. I went down another flight, Then another, hand sliding on the rail, boots careful but quick. I made it to a landing where the railing was bent outward, and I had to step around it. For a second, my balance shifted and panic surged. One wrong move, and I'd go through the side. Behind me, the climbing stopped. I didn't feel relief. I felt dread. The stop was worse than the pursuit. I forced myself to look up. It stood 3 landings above me, close enough that I could see details I didn't want to see. The head was deer-shaped, but not quite. The muzzle looked slightly too long, and the skin around it had a tight, stretched look, as if the face was pulled over bone that didn't match. Its mouth hung open slightly, and the teeth were wrong. Too even, too flat, more like a person's than a deer's. It stared down at me. Then it moved its jaw, not chewing, not panting, shaping something. A sound came out, soft at first, then clearer. Hey. It wasn't a perfect voice. It was like a bad recording, like someone mimicking speech without knowing where the sounds come from. The word came out too slow, too wet. My whole body reacted before my mind did. My legs wanted to fold. My hands tightened until my knuckles hurt. The thing's head tilted again, exaggerated. Hey, it said again, a little better this time. I backed down one more flight, fighting the urge to turn and run. That's when it took another step, and another. It wasn't rushing, it wasn't panicking, it was matching me, hurting me. I got the bear spray out of my pack. My fingers shook so badly I almost dropped it. I held it in front of me, thumb over the safety. Back off, I said, and hated how thin my voice sounded. The deer blinked once, slow. Then, it smiled. Or tried to. The lips pulled back too far, exposing those flat teeth. The expression didn't fit on a deer face. It looked like a mask trying to do a human thing. Back off, it repeated, and my blood went cold, because it said it in my exact cadence, my exact pitch, like it had just recorded me and played it back through a mouth built wrong. I felt something inside me snap from disbelief to survival. I started moving down faster, almost slipping. The deer followed. It didn't need to run. It climbed with that same heavy, confident pace, the metal stairs groaning under it. I could see my car in my mind like a lifeline, even though it was probably 20 minutes back through the woods. I just had to get off the tower, get away from the stairs. The stairs were a funnel, a trap. I hit the last flight and practically slid down. My boots hit the ground hard enough to jar my knees. The air down here felt different, warmer, like I'd stepped into a pocket. My ears rang with my own pulse. I didn't look back. I ran. Not full sprint at first, because the ground was uneven and slick with leaves, but fast enough that my breath burned. Behind me, the tower groaned. Then a heavier metallic clank as the thing descended faster. I ran towards the trail, following my own footprints in the thin frost. The woods looked the same as before, but now Everything felt staged. Trees felt too close, shadows too thick. Every branch felt like it would snag me. I heard something behind me. Footsteps. Not the light, delicate steps of a deer. 2 beats, then a pause, then 2 beats again. Like someone was trying to walk like an animal. I risked a glance over my shoulder. It was behind me, weaving through the trees. Still shaped like a deer, but moving wrong. It didn't bound like a deer. It didn't float over the underbrush. It stepped with intention, lifting its legs too high, placing them down too carefully, and it was watching me the whole time. Its head stayed turned toward me, even as its body angled forward, like an owl. I ran harder. My lungs burned. The cold air cut my throat. I could taste that metallic smell again, like it was following me on the wind. The trail dipped, and I had to hop over a downed log. My foot caught on a slick patch of moss, and I stumbled, catching myself on a sapling. Pain flared in my palm, where a branch had jabbed through my glove. I barely noticed. I kept going. The footsteps behind me sped up. Not running, not galloping, just closing the distance with calm certainty. I fumbled the bear spray in my hand. The can felt too small, useless, like bringing a lighter to a house fire. I came around a bend and saw a split in the trail, one path wider and more used, one narrow and overgrown. I didn't remember it being there. I didn't remember seeing any split on the way in. I hesitated for half a second, then took the wider path because it felt more likely to lead back to the parking pull-off. The moment my boot hit that path, the woods changed again. Not visually, not in some magical way, just in the way the air sat. It felt heavier, and the silence got worse. The footsteps stopped. I slowed, heart hammering. I looked back down the trail. Nothing. No deer, no movement, only trees. My relief lasted about 2 seconds, because then I heard it. A breath right behind my ear. I spun. It wasn't behind me. It was to my right, just off the trail, half hidden behind a maple. So close I could see the wet shine of its nostrils. Its eyes were clearer up close, and that was worse. They weren't cloudy. They were human. Not shaped like a human's, but the focus in them was human. The awareness, the intent. It leaned forward slightly, like it was curious. "Hey," it said again, softer this time. My body moved before my brain gave it permission. I raised the bear spray and hit the trigger. A stream of orange mist blasted in the face. The knot deer jerked back, head snapping upward, and it made a sound that wasn't a deer sound. Not a bleat, not a snort, a wet, broken scream. It stumbled. Claws. Because now I say they were claws, not hooves, scraping bark as it tried to get away from the spray. The smell of pepper hit my nose, and my eyes watered instantly. My throat seized. I coughed, choking on it. The knot deer thrashed, and for a second it stood upright. Not fully, not comfortably, but enough. Enough that I saw the front legs bend and straighten like arms. Enough that I saw the chest was wrong, too broad, with a suggestion of ribs under stretched hide. Enough that my brain screamed, "This thing can do more than you think." It dropped back down on all fours with a jolt and took off into the trees, crashing through branches, still screaming, the sound fading into the distance. I stood there shaking, bear spray can still hissing as I kept the trigger pressed out of pure panic. When I realized it was gone, I let go and the can went quiet. My lungs burned. My eyes stung. Snot ran down my face. I wiped it with my sleeve, smearing it across my cheek. I didn't feel safe. I felt like I just made it angry. I forced myself to move. The trail ahead looked normal again. The wider path continued through the trees. I started walking fast, then jogging, then breaking into a run whenever the ground allowed. I kept the bear spray in my hand with the safety off, thumb ready. Every sound made me flinch. A branch snapping, leaves shifting, the distant call of something that might have been a bird. I kept expecting it to hit me from the side. I kept expecting that wet hay in my ear again. 10 minutes passed, then 15. My legs started to ache. My lungs felt raw. I began to see light through the trees, the suggestion of a clearing. Hope flared so hard it made me dizzy. Then my foot snagged. It wasn't a root. It wasn't a rock. It was something looped around my ankle. I went down hard. My knee slammed into a buried stone, sending a bolt of pain up my leg. My palms hit the ground, the bear spray can skittering out of my hand and landing in dead leaves. I rolled over gasping and saw it. A length of braided cord, thin but strong, pulled taut between two saplings. A trip line. Someone had set it. Or something. I scrabbled for the bear spray. A shadow moved at the edge of the trees. The knot deer stepped into view. It wasn't charging. It wasn't rushing. It was walking like it had all the time in the world. Its face was streaked wet, and its eyes were narrowed now. Not in pain, in focus, like the spray had sharpened it. It stopped a few yards away and stared at me. I grabbed the bear spray, got the nozzle up, and tried to stand. My injured knee buckled, and I went down again with a strangled sound. Pain pulsed through the joint. Something in there felt wrong, twisted. The knot deer took one step closer. My thumb hit the trigger. The can sputtered. The stream was weak. The can nearly empty. Panic surged so hard it made my vision tunnel. The knot deer tilted its head and opened its mouth. This time, it didn't say hey. It said my name. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but close enough that my stomach dropped into my boots. It had heard me earlier, probably talking to myself, probably muttering under my breath like I always do when I hike alone. It said it like it was testing it. I screamed at it, some incoherent noise, and hit the trigger again. A last weak puff drifted out. The knot deer flinched back, not from the spray, but from my scream, like it hadn't expected real emotion. Then, it lunged. It moved so fast, I didn't even process it as motion. 1 second, it was yards away. The next, it was on me. Its weight hit my chest, knocking the air out of me. I felt its claws rake across my jacket, tearing fabric. One caught my forearm and sliced through layers like they were paper. Hot pain flashed, immediate and sharp. I twisted, trying to get it off of me, and its face came inches from mine. It smelled like wet fur and old pennies and something spoiled. Its mouth opened too wide. And inside, behind those flat teeth, I saw a second set. Smaller, pointed, like something that had no business being inside a deer. I jammed the bear spray can into its mouth on instinct. It bit down. The can crunched. For a second, it held there, teeth sunk into metal, eyes locked on me. Then it jerked its head, yanking my arm with it, and the claws dug into my shoulder. I felt something pop in my shoulder, pain exploding, and I screamed. My mind went blank, except for one thing. Get up, get up, get up. My hand flailed around in the leaves and found a rock. Not a big one, just big enough. I swung it up and slammed it into the side of the knot deer's head. Once, twice. The third hit landed with a dull, awful thud, and the knot deer's grip loosened. It reeled back, still straddling my chest, and made that broken scream again. Quieter, angrier. I rolled out from under it and tried to stand, using my good leg. My bad knee screamed at me. My shoulder felt like it was hanging wrong. Blood ran down my forearm, warm and slippery, soaking my glove. The knot deer shook its head, then looked at me again with that calm focus. It wasn't done. It wasn't scared. It was assessing, like it was deciding whether the meal was worth the fight. I backed away, limping, eyes scanning for anything I could use. My gaze landed on a fallen branch, thick and heavy like a crude club. I grabbed it with my good hand, lifting it between us. The knot deer stepped forward. I swung. The branch connected with its shoulder, and it stumbled, more from surprise than pain. I swung again, catching it across the muzzle. It snapped its head sideways and bit into the branch. The wood cracked under its teeth. It yanked hard. I held on, and my injured shoulder screamed. But I didn't let go. The knot deer pulled, dragging me forward. Then it did something that made my stomach flip. It stood again. Not upright like a person, but close enough. The front legs bent and straightened as it pulled the branch closer, and its chest rose like it had lungs built for something else. It leaned its face toward mine, and spoke in a voice that was almost mine. Stop. The word came out clean, like it had finally figured it out. I shook my head, tears streaming from pain and pepper spray residue and sheer terror. "No," I rasped, and yanked the branch back with everything I had. The knot deer's grip slipped. I used the moment to stumble backwards, then turned and ran, limped, really, toward the clearing I'd seen earlier. My vision blurred. The world narrowed to light and the sound of my own ragged breath. Behind me, I heard it follow. Not rushing, keeping pace. I burst through the trees into the clearing, and the sudden openness made me almost collapse with relief. My car was there, parked crooked in the pull-off just like I'd left it. I almost sobbed. I fumbled for my keys with shaking hands, nearly dropping them. My blood slicked the metal. I got the key into the door, yanked it open, and practically fell into the driver's seat. I slammed the door and locked it. My hands shook so badly I fumbled the ignition. Outside, the knot deer stepped into the clearing. It stopped a few feet from the car and stared at me through the windshield. In the open light, it looked even more wrong. The proportions were off. The legs too long. The neck too thick. The head slightly too big. It lifted its muzzle and pressed it to the glass. I held my breath, frozen, expecting the glass to shatter. It didn't. It just stared. Then, it opened its mouth. "Hey," it said softly, like a greeting between friends. I turned the key. The engine coughed, then roared to life. The knot deer flinched at the sound. I threw the car into reverse and backed out so fast the tires spun on gravel, throwing stones. The knot deer moved, but not to chase. It stepped back and watched. Watched as I spun the car around. Watched as I hit the road too hard. Watched as the tree swallowed it again in my rearview mirror. I didn't stop driving until my hands started cramping around the steering wheel. I didn't stop until I hit a patch of road where my phone buzzed with service. I pulled over so hard I nearly went into the ditch. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't dial 911. When the operator answered, I tried to speak and realized I was crying. I gave them the location as best I could. I told them about the tower, the blood, the struggle. I told them something attacked me. I didn't say "not deer." I didn't say it spoke. I said an animal because I wanted them to come, and I didn't want to sound like the kind of person they ignore. An ambulance met me 10 minutes later at a gas station off the highway. I sat on the curb while a paramedic wrapped my arm. The cuts weren't deep enough to hit tendon, but they bled like crazy. My knee was swelling fast, and my shoulder was wrong. They immobilized it, asked me what happened. I told them I didn't know. That was true, in a way. A sheriff's deputy showed up while they were loading me into the ambulance. He asked for details, wrote things down. His eyes flicked to the bear spray can sitting on my passenger seat, crushed and dented. He asked why it was crushed. I said it got bitten. He stared at me for a long second, then nodded like he'd heard worse. At the hospital, they cleaned me up, stitched the deeper cut on my forearm, confirmed my shoulder was partially dislocated, confirmed I'd sprained my knee badly. Nothing life-threatening, just enough to make sure I'd remember it every time I reached for something on a high shelf or stepped off a curb wrong. I gave my statement again. The deputy asked if I'd seen another person out there. I told him no, but I told him about the blood in the tower and the trail leading to the window. I told him I thought someone might have been hurt. He left, said they'd check it out. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the beeps and the distant murmur of nurses. And every time a footstep paused outside my door, my body tensed. Sometime around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. I hadn't noticed any missed calls. The number was blocked. My stomach dropped. I stared at it until my hand stopped shaking enough to press play. At first, there was only static. Then, a soft sound, breathing, and then, in a voice that was almost mine, but not quite, like it was being played through something wet. "Hey." I sat up so fast my shoulder screamed. The voicemail continued. There was rustling, like leaves, a faint, metallic clank, like a tower groaning in the wind. Then, my name again, drawn out wrong, like it enjoyed the shape of it. And finally, quiet laughter. Not a deer sound, not a human sound either, just something amused. The message ended. I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. In the morning, the deputy came back. His face was different than the day before. Tight, controlled. He said they found the tower. He said they found blood, just like I'd reported. He said they found signs of a struggle. He said they found drag marks leading to the window. He also said they found something else. Tracks. He didn't say what kind. He just said they were odd. And he said there were no bodies. No missing persons report that matched. No hikers reported overdue in that area. No campsites nearby. Nothing. I asked if they found an animal, a deer, anything. He looked at me like he was deciding what to say. Then he said, carefully, "We didn't see anything when we went in." I didn't like the way he said it. Like he was leaving out the part where they heard something. Like he didn't want to put certain words in the air. He told me to stay out of those woods. Like that was an option I'd ever consider again. He gave me a card with his number in case I remembered anything else. When he left, I deleted the voicemail. Then I realized something that made my blood go cold all over again. Deleting it didn't matter. Because that voice didn't need my phone. It didn't need technology. It had been close enough to whisper in my ear in the middle of the woods. And now it knew where I lived. Because my license was on file. Because I told the hospital who I was. Because I'd called for help like a rational person. I sat there, staring out the hospital window at the parking lot below, watching normal people walk to their cars with coffee cups and backpacks, and no idea what the woods can do when something decides you're interesting. I told myself it had followed me because it was hungry, because it wanted to hunt, because it was a predator. But predators don't leave voicemails. Predators don't repeat your words back to you just to see how you react. Predators don't take their time. That thing in the woods didn't want to eat me. Not right away. It wanted something else. Practice, maybe. A voice. A name. A way to get closer next time. And the worst part, the part that still sits like a weight in my chest, is the memory of that fire lookout tower. The blood. The window. Someone went out of that window because staying inside was worse. And whatever made them choose that is still out there.
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.